the point is that that I don't see that you're doing anything more than that. Just because you throw in a random number generator. That I met the guy. I don't know if there's a guy who's great researcher on natural language processing, Dutch guy, was making Twitter bots. And then one of the Twitter bots made a death threat, and the police came to his house. And he said, "You made a death threat." He's like, "No, that was a Twitter bot that was autonomous." And they're like, "No, that's your Twitter bot," you know? And he's like, and I'm like, they're right. I'm glad that the Dutch police are sensible. And he's like, "You don't understand autonomy." And I'm like, "Well, define understand." I'm like, often thought of as one of the leading authorities on autonomy. At least I used to be, though. It's more when I was doing my systems AI stuff. So it was not, and it's not something I projected myself as too. I never said until just now that I'm an authority on autonomy. I just talked about the stuff that was so related to autonomy that I got asked to speak on it quite often. So anyway, the point was, he thought that it was sufficient to break his link of responsibility to the system that he developed, that he'd put like a random number generator in it. And like, look, you can't do that. You can't, that's like saying that if you throw your baby off the porch, that, you let go of it. So if it falls, it's not your problem. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That there is still an intentional action that produced and sculpted the system. Now, some people are saying, well, but we don't have that. Back to babies again. When babies become adults, then they do become peers. So the extent of your responsibility for them massively diminishes, right? I think people still, like, if somebody turns out to be a horribly corrupt politician, it must still embarrass their parents, right? No matter how old they are. but basically, so there is I think there is still that little link. But the point is that that's literally life. Life is about lineages. It's not about individuals. Right, so it is there's this flow of life where you're going to die and your child is going to come up and then they're going to die, and that keeps going, right? So that is the mechanism. And now you could say, well, why don't we do that mechanism with AI? Okay, so two problems, and they're not insurmountable entirely. But the one problem that I think is entirely insurmountable is that the A in AI stands for artifact. So that means somebody designed it, and we have so much more control over the system. So we can't do what I suggested before for a child. There's no way to make a child, for example, not care about being socially isolated. That's just like, you can't do it with a child, you can't do it with a sheep, you can't do it with the goldfish, right? They care, right? Not goldfish so much as guppies. But anyway, I don't want to feed people carp, it's okay, right? But guppies terrified of being alone. All right, so anyway. For humans, being in solitary confinement is a form of torture, all right, and that's it's accepted. You don't do that, or you shouldn't do that. A lot of countries still do that. Anyway, there's no way around that, but that's not true for your laptop. It just isn't, and there's no reason to make that true about AI. In fact, it's not even clear that it could be coherently made to be true. But even if it could be coherently made to be true, given that would be a design decision, whereas with the child, it's a necessity, right? That's what makes it totally different. So, we share like the vast majority of our genetic material with fruit flies. We just really do not have very many degrees of freedom when we're designing our child. Maybe we get to choose the other parent. That not everybody gets to do that by choice either. But you still, there's so much of the process that you have zero control over. Of course, raising a child is important too, but it's just nothing like the amount of responsibility and authority that you have over developing a piece of software or developing a robot. So that's where part of the discontinuity comes in. The other part is that life has been spending billions of years getting better at persisting. And so the entire idea that uploading ourselves into computers will make us live longer is, to me, entirely laughable. It's just like the average time to failure of a sort of a software representation is like 5 years, whereas the average time to failure for a human is like 83 years, right? So you're much less likely to actually benefit yourself by putting yourself into a robot. But even if you could do that, even if that was a coherent idea.